don't think you could ever stick a stake in the ground and say like, we're done, like we've transformed. Agile transformation or transformation is ongoing. It should be continuous improvement.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. In this episode, Kelly Drozd, a product marketer at Atlassian, shares her thoughts on Agile marketing. She's an Agile marketing enthusiast. Let's dive into it right now. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And tell us about yourself a little bit, your background, your career.
Yeah, so I could probably go on forever about my background, but I'll just give a little update or a little summary. I am from Chicago, Illinois, originally. I started my career off after college working in college athletics. I did sales, fundraising, moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where I continued doing fundraising. And then I transitioned my career a little bit and got into more sales roles. So I worked in a variety of industries, from pharmaceuticals to third-party logistics to technology, sales, and staffing solutions at some extremely large companies, to working at my last company before Atlassian, which is ALSAC. It is the fundraising and brand awareness organization for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So that's where I was prior to Atlassian for about 3.5 years. And then been at Atlassian is actually 1 year as of June 1st, working in product marketing, like you mentioned, for the Jira software team specifically.
Yeah, congratulations on the 1 year anniversary at Atlassian.
Yeah, thank you. It's exciting. I can't believe it's been a year. It's been a crazy one to start a new job in 2020. I moved from Memphis to San Francisco, and obviously we've been 100% remote the entire time. So it's been really unique to make a change like that and be working remotely with most of the people I've never met, which is funny or odd, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's start it by discovering the origin of the Agile first. So, and what is Agile exactly? By your definition?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of different definitions of Agile, but if you start at the beginning of Agile, I would say that, the Agile, values and principles and Agile mindset and ways of working are probably close to 40 years old. I think most people in the software development that have worked in software that long will most likely agree with that. But the Agile Manifesto for software development, for those that don't know, came out in 2001. And it was a set of values and principles really meant to help software teams uncover better ways of working. So there's 4 values, 12 principles. And for those that don't know, it's, Agile is really moving away from a longer development cycle. So creating a piece of software, might have taken 6 months, a year, years, and it took a very long time to get that in front of customers to be able to get feedback. And so focus on what you're building for them, whether it's internal customers or external customers. So you make sure that you're continuing to solve problems for your customers in kind of short bursts, rather than, building something and then 3 years later you say, aha, here you go market, or here you go customer. And so many things have changed, or you're building things that aren't useful. So yeah, those short bursts and iterations is, I guess, simply put, what Agile is known for, but it's definitely a lot more than that. And there's probably a million different opinions on what Agile is, but so that's it from a software development standpoint in a short summary.
Yeah, it's great. It's very clear. So why did the marketing function start adopting Agile in the first place? Because, originally it started from software world. And then do you think this software leading culture has a place in the marketing world?
Yeah, I think a coworker of mine gave a presentation not too long ago, and he used this phrase, and I think it came from someone. I'm going to misquote it, or I don't want to misrepresent who it came from, but it's the essential, like, that software is eating the world. So when you think about, 40 years ago, and then now 20 years ago when the Agile Manifesto came out, that's 2001. So
yeah,
when you think of where you were in 2001, I know where I was in 2001, and I did not have a mass amount of technology at my fingertips. Like, the world wasn't digitally connected the way that it was today.
Yeah.
You didn't have the amount of, software as a service and just products left and right that really help you connect with people, help the way you work. help do a variety of things, from things like, Uber and Airbnb and like all of these pieces of technology that have solved problems for people. So as I don't want to say digital transformation, but as the world became more digital and more software first, like that starts to impact marketers. Marketers have more technology around them, between digital platforms that they have to use and ways to engage with their customers, not only social media, but a lot of times, marketers now, especially me, like I'm selling software. So I would say traditionally, and a lot of marketers out there are probably like this. And, I would say that I was too in my last role. And it's not unusual that the marketers are still doing a lot of their work based on projects, and marketing departments are often siloed in sort of either project-based or functional silos, which as organizations grow and scale and are needing to respond to the market and respond to needs of the customers really quickly, that gets it can be really, really hard to do. And so a group of marketers came together, I think it was 2012, and came up with the marketing Agile manifesto, which outlines, 7 values and 10 principles, which are very similar to those that you see in the Agile software manifesto, but they're really custom tailored for marketers. And the truth is that a lot of the pain points that drove software teams to start adopting Agile ways of work and really adopting that mindset and values and principles made a lot of sense to marketers, because it was solving a lot of those same problems as well. And so I would say I first heard about Agile marketing from a wonderful company called Agile Sherpas, and Andrea Fryer. I've got to know her really well over the years and actually did some training with them. So I first heard about her and her company back in 2000, probably 16, when I started working in marketing operations, and was seeing a lot of pain points from our teams not being able to necessarily respond really quickly. It was not, and I'm not saying they weren't making data-driven decisions, but there was definitely just a better way for teams to be able to work together and respond to the customer and be able to respond to the market in really a more effective and efficient way. And so that's when I started talking to my friends that work in software development, like, hey, what is this Agile thing? How is this solving problems of how you were working before, or how software development was done in the past? And so from those conversations, I was like, okay, I need to, look more into Agile marketing, and Agile Sherpas have a ton of resources, and now they just have more. But it was really at the time trying to translate the problems that our teams were having, and figuring out like, how can we apply what our friends in software development have learned to help us start to work better together, from, the mindset our teams have, to sometimes of the execution and getting something to market, to the tools that we were using, and being able to have really good metrics and really good data to make better decisions. So those are all things that I have focused my last role, and that we continue to focus on here at Atlassian in marketing as well.
And can you elaborate a little bit on the principles of Agile marketing? For our audience.
Yeah, so I actually have it in front of me because I knew that I wouldn't be able to rattle them off. So when you look at the values, so the values in software development and Agile software development manifesto, there's 4. There's 7 in the Agile marketing manifesto. So the values are validated learning over opinions and conventions. So again, being able to learn something from your customer, learn something from the market over, hey, we've already done it this way, or I feel like this, but that's using data and using, continuous learning from your customer and the market to make really good decisions. So the next one is customer focus versus silos and hierarchy, right? So organizations, partially because digital, partially because it just kind of takes a village, right? Like, getting a product to market includes the product teams and software just as much as it does sales and marketing and legal and a variety of teams. So you have to be able to collaborate for the benefit of your customer. And if you do not, it will most likely be a not very good experience for your customer. And so that's why you have to be very customer focused in any way that your organization could cut down those silos to be able to better serve your customer, and hierarchies to be able to make decisions quickly. The working teams, they say that the working teams they tend to be closer to the customer and understand their customer problem. So example, if I know what my customer problem is and I have research to say it, if I have to go through 100 layers of approval to get it done, I might have missed my window of opportunity. So that is more of like the culture of Agile, like being able to empower your team to make good decisions that are solving problems for the customer versus a long approval process, having to get things approved. And don't get me wrong, like approval processes have to happen from a brand standpoint, from a consistency standpoint, from connecting the dots across different initiatives happening. But be really cautious or aware of the silos and hierarchies you have at your organization, how they may be impacting your ability to, respond to your customer or create a product or a marketing campaign to solve problems for your customer. And the next one is, being able to adapt and have iterative campaigns over big bang campaigns. Again, if I were going to ship a marketing campaign today, like I found out that there's this window in the market, I had the ability to put some messaging in the market or do something to solve a customer problem that is going to drive usage, create awareness, drive adoption. But if it takes me 6 months to a year to plan and get that done, I have most likely missed my window. So how do you break down that big bang campaign and all of those things to do smaller campaigns or different tactics to really test out and validate that your strategy is correct? So that's where you think of like sprints, right? Sprints in software development. It's like breaking something down into I'll say typically 2-week increments to try to ship something in 2 weeks that's going to provide value to your customer. So you're not taking a year or 2 years or 3 years. And then the next one is flexible versus rigid planning. Again, that kind of goes, actually I skipped one, but that kind of goes with the above that I just mentioned. Like rigid planning allows for no flexibility. And so how do you have flexibility within your marketing strategy and what those tactics are? Because things might change, tactics might need to change. Maybe this tactic that you had was really great when you kind of started mulling it over and bring the team along. But if something changes, do you have the ability to say, okay, we need to not do this and we need to do this? And so that's that flexibility that you need. And then, the process of customer discovery over static predictions, like continuing to understand your customers in the market. I think kind of with how quickly things move, like nothing is really going to be forever. And so you need to keep validating your assumptions along the way. And then, small experiments over a large bet. We kind of talked about that with iterative campaigns over big bang. So if you say, I need to hit this revenue number or this whatever, and you take a whole year to plan it, that's a really big bet to hit that number. Like, how could you break that down into small campaigns or small tactics throughout the year to get you to that? Or else you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket. And that's really hard to do. And it's a lot of planning up front that might not be 100% validated. You don't know really what's going to work until you get feedback from the marketer from your customers. And that's just the values. There's 10 principles as well, but I'm not going to bore you all.
No problem.
Go on your own.
No problem. I think there's a lot of risks if you are using a waterfall way, like a good old way to do things. So many things can happen, get delayed. It's supposed to ship this within a year, but it dragged along into 2 years, 3 years. It becomes even longer. That's crazy.
Yeah. And some things are hard, right? Like, I think it's always knowing, I'm not saying knowing what can, and I'm using air quotes, be agile versus what shouldn't be agile. So I've had this conversation a ton in my last role, but we had a lot of events, and we have events at Atlassian. We had our Atlassian team, which is like our annual conference, which is extremely well attended. So if you're planning an event, that is kind of waterfall, right? Like there is a date in which the event will happen, and there are all the things that have to happen before that. And so, yes, things might change, right? So like, for example, before I was at Atlassian, I was actually an Atlassian customer, and I was speaking at their 2020 conference, and their conference is in April. So it was like that March 13th, maybe the week before that, I was supposed to fly to Las Vegas and go be part of this session. And then, COVID, actually, people started taking it seriously, right? Like they should have. And we went 100% remote. And so that team was able to switch in like less than a month and go from a huge event that they had with thousands of customers every year to an all digital event. Like that is agility. That is being able to respond very quickly to something's happening in the market. And a lot of companies do that. And that's just a small example. Like there's like Agile, when you think about like the Agile manifesto, and then there is just being very quick and nimble, which is really, really fantastic. And it's really, really needed. But being able to do that is really important. But yeah, there are things where it has a timeline. There is a date that something has to happen. And there's a lot of coordination that goes into that. But there's still an iterative way that you can plan that. And you can continue to refine that plan, whether it's on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, to check in, adjust as needed. Yeah, so it's really that balance. There are some things that are going to be waterfall-y, but not everything has to be that. There's some things that just, like I said, have a process, have a lead time, and it takes time. And marketing has a lot of moving pieces and a lot of different subject matter experts with different roles that are part of a larger strategy. So that's really hard to coordinate. It's really challenging. I think marketers have a lot to think about when they start talking about how to organize teams and how to dedicate teams and arrange teams to be really focused on customer problems, because there are a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, that's really great. There are a lot of inherent great values about agile marketing. What do you think, just in terms of the usefulness of the agile marketing, the methodology, which areas of or aspects of marketing activities would be benefit the most from the agile methodology?
Yeah, so when you think about agile methodology in general, it really is the values and the principles and then the practices. And the practices are more of like how they manifest, right? So I think it's really easy to say what agile practices, marketing, or ask yourself like what agile practices do marketing teams benefit from? And I could say things like Kanban or Scrum, but those are really just a framework. There's so much more than that, which is why I think that really understanding what Agile is and those values and principles are really important, because those practices will definitely change over time, and they probably should as teams start working together and continuously improve the way that they're working. So having said that, some of the most common ways that you see agile marketing practices come to life at organizations are really a hybrid approach, like taking Scrum from a software development standpoint, and the different practices within Scrum. I'll just use a light term, like being able to organize your work in 2-week increments, and being able to really continuously prioritize your work and refine your backlog of work. Those things are common, and you hear things like stand-ups too, right? I think when you hear of Agile, it's like, oh, you go to stand-ups and you do sprints, and like that's not always the case. So the Kanban methodology is also a really common way that marketers really look at how they approach their work or apply that methodology to their work. And Kanban method is really based on continuous improvement.
Yeah, I've seen the content marketing functions use Kanban. Is I think it's really useful for them because they can see the working progress, what needs the focus, what needs to get done, and then how everything flows. Yeah, it's helpful for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so that is extremely common. Not only being able to visualize that work, but being able to visualize it and be able to report on it, right? So it's really great to visualize your work, but if you're not looking at how long did it take for something to get from to do to done, then you really don't have a way to improve your process and really see, hey, what those roadblocks are, or identify what dependencies are, and start to try to make the flow of work a lot more smooth. And then I think I mentioned it, but when you start looking at like the hybrid methodology, it's more of introducing different planning meetings around that Kanban method. So that's where I say, like, beg, borrowing, and stealing from Scrum as it makes sense. But something that has worked for us in the past is making sure you have these steady cadences of quarterly planning meetings, monthly planning meetings, and you're constantly prioritizing and refining work and keeping everyone on the same page. So yeah, quarterly, monthly, we've done weekly and bi-weekly, but being able to visualize work and have a tool in which you can see work holistically and see, again, who's working on what, when, and what those priorities are, have been extremely valuable. And I think it's really important for every organization to be able to visualize work in that way and to try to break down, silos as much as possible.
Exactly. So you've helped organizations implement agile practices before. So could you share a story about that? How did it work out?
Yeah, so I would say that I've been at one. So when I worked in software staffing and services, I had the benefit of talking to hundreds of software developers and Scrum masters and Agile coaches for a good 3.5 years. So that's kind of where I started to understand, like, what is Agile, what is the software development lifecycle. And then until I got to the last role at ALSAC, I was in marketing operations, and it was started kind of what I was mentioning before, but it wasn't just like, hey, we're going to be Agile. It was more of really taking time to understand how different teams work in the marketing organization and how we work with other teams, identifying, because the team that I led was project managers. And if you've worked in a marketing agency, think of your traffic team. So, the trafficking team at marketing agencies back in the day used to carry around job jackets and really move jobs from person to person until they're done. I might be dating myself on knowing that, but from leading those teams and from being in marketing operations, our job was really to make sure that the marketing team is working as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And just through working with other teams and continuing to make sure they had the right, tools and processes in place and the data that they needed to make decisions, we uncovered a lot of problems that were really frustrating our marketing teams, from individual contributors. So you're someone on your content team, or a designer, or someone on web production, or copywriter. Those, when you're working in a structure where everything is project-based, you have those poor, brilliant human beings on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 projects. And it's extremely hard for them to really prioritize their context switching all the time. And we were seeing that happen across all of our teams. And so as someone that led marketing strategy, you don't really have a team. Like, there's no idea of team, because you just have work that needs to be done. And then all of these people that you're kind of throwing work over a fence to say, do this thing. Like, that was just fundamentally broken. And so we needed to find a way to help solve for a lot of those dependencies, a lot of that context switching. And that's when it's like, okay, like, what was happening in software? It was very much the same thing. The software developers and those working teams were so far away from the customer and the strategy, and they were really detached, and they weren't sure necessarily always what they were building. They were just responding to someone saying, like, we're doing this thing, and now I'm on 5 teams and I just do this thing. And we wanted to make sure that teams were really invested, and they're all invested in what is the problem we're solving for this customer, and being part of that strategy as that content developer, as those subject matter experts, being part of that strategy rather than being, the person that gets, in our case, work to do in Jira software, right? It gets assigned to them. Like, we need them to be part of the strategy. And so that's when we started looking at our organization holistically and saying, how are we structured now? How are our teams structured? Is there a way to look at our customers and the bodies of work we have? If you know software development, you talk about value stream or value stream mapping, which I won't get into, but trying to look at the way that work comes in, the type of work and who those customers are, and start to organize teams around work so they can stay constantly working on the same team as much as possible, whether that's 6 months, whether that's a year. Our goal was to try to keep teams together as much as possible so they can strategize, plan, and execute work together. As you know, and most people know listening, that's really hard to do in marketing. Marketing is very unlike software, in which you might have a marketing campaign that maybe doesn't have an email component, or maybe doesn't have a copy component, doesn't have a web component. And so the really tricky thing with marketing is that sometimes you can't have a dedicated team throughout the year. And so you have to start looking at like, who do your core teams need to be that can stay dedicated throughout the year? And then what are those dependency teams that are almost like a shared service where you're bringing them along, but they're not part of that core team like 100% of the time. So there's a really tricky balance. And I think it's definitely easy to do when you have a smaller organization, but if you're looking to make changes at a larger organization, you definitely have to step back and look at things a little bit more holistically, and what pain points your teams have, and then how your organization's structured, and start looking at like, how do we start tackling these things in like a very small iterative way? Yeah, because it's complicated the larger your organization is.
Can you give some practical advice on how to get started on adopting the Agile marketing approach? Once start adopting Agile, it's like kind of fundamental change to how organization functions.
Yeah, I'm super biased because I like reading and knowing the history of why, and like why I'm doing something or why we should do something. I think part of the reason is I had to turn around and sell that to leadership, sell to individual contributors. So if this is the first time you've heard Agile marketing, or maybe you've heard it at your company and you have not read Death of a Marketer by Andrea Freire, like definitely read that book. That really helps me understand like the just the history of marketing and how it's evolved over time to really where marketers are today, and some really good practical steps on how you can start thinking about marketing agility and start changing your mindset. So definitely read that book. If you're someone that has the ability to change the way that you work or can influence people around you, I think the easiest thing to do is just like visualize your work, make it easy for the team to understand like the system in which work goes from to do to done. Make that extremely visible so people know kind of what the strategy is, what the tactics are, and make sure that they're involved in that process and really help prioritize that. I guess beyond all of that, as a marketer, you have to know your customer and you have to know what problems you're solving for the customer. I think gone are the days that a marketer can just say, we want to do this really cool marketing campaign, and have no idea what their customer problems are, or no idea of the best way to engage with your customers. So the ability to have data to help you uncover what problems is the thing that I'm going to market, going to solve for my customer, and then making sure that you're building specific campaigns around that and doing a really good job with targeting for those campaigns specifically. Yeah, I think that's first and foremost, because if you don't do that, but you start visualizing your work and doing stand-ups, like you're not really going to get anywhere very quickly. Yeah, so read the book, know your customer, and then definitely just visualize your work and make your life easier by having tools that are open, that are easy for you to see the work that is going into a campaign. It can easily manage dependencies and be able to track work from, again, kind of your backlog all the way to it shipped. It makes your life a lot easier than having things, and I know this from experience, between having things in, shared drives on Excel documents and Word documents and PowerPoints, like being able to have that information out accessible for the team and to be able to visualize that is extremely, extremely powerful tool.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. Let's look at your current role at Atlassian. Yeah. So how does your marketing function operate under the Agile principle?
If you're looking at the Agile marketing manifesto, so the number one value in Agile marketing manifesto is validated learnings over opinions and conventions. I will say at Atlassian, we do an absolutely fantastic job of having a lot of customer feedback, a lot of market research, and a lot of data to help us make really, really good decisions. So yeah, if you're a marketer, you're working, on our team, for example, like when I came into this organization, I had so much data that was really great because it made it really easy when we started thinking about what problems are we going to solve for our customer. And by looking at the data, looking at customer feedback, understanding what's happening in the market, what's happening in our competition, it was really easy to be able to figure out this is the direction we have to go because we know these things, which is really, really great. When you talk about like being able to like the collaboration, right? I think one thing you want to move away from is like having silos and having hierarchy and having teams that are really focused on your customer. That's something that we are always trying to evolve. Before I started, our organization continues to think about how we evolve our practice. And so we're always changing and optimizing, but we do have some pod structures where those functional teams, like I mentioned, are aligned to our specific customer base or our pod specifically. So we have access and are able to strategize with like your performance marketing teams, with your SEO teams, with your design teams, and with our product teams. So we're aligned in such a way where we have moved away from silos and hierarchy the best we can. But that evolves, right? Like your customer might change, the products and services you offer might change. And so it's an evolution. I think gone are the days of like creating a organizational structure than just leaving it like, oh, that always needs to be evolved. I think we do a good job at continuing to find, what that balance is. So that's kind of how we are here. There's a lot of really great things. We're super flexible as an organization. I feel like we've been around, and in our organization specifically grew up with Agile. Our company is about as old as the Agile Manifesto. So when you think about, we were the tool that grew up with Agile software development. So as an organization, we're very close to that. And so we're very rooted in Agile software development, Agile ways of working, kind of that mindset and values and principles.
What are the challenges of implementing Agile marketing for marketing functions?
I think not understanding the problems that you hope that Agile marketing will solve, and not understanding what success looks like. And those things kind of go hand in hand. So if you say, we want to be Agile because Agile marketing is a thing, and you're not really identifying what those problems are for your specific organization and how Agile is going to solve for that, then you will most likely get stuck. So I think it's definitely making sure that you understand, what is this going to solve for, and what do we hope to get out of this, and being able to use those pain points to be able to say, this is why we're doing this thing. I love the term Agile marketing, and I love the term Agile in general. To me, it has a special place in my heart. But I will say that if you lead with terms like Agile is going to solve our problems, and then, you kind of get in a spot where your transformation is stuck, it's really easy for people to say like Agile's not working, when the fact of the matter is like, it does work. So that's why I think you need to spend time on the front end really to say, what are the problems that an organization is facing? What do we hope to get out of this? It should be, we want to be able to respond to the market more quickly. We want to be able to be more effective, more efficient. We want to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And once you know that, then your plan for moving forward is a little bit easier. And I will say, if you say something like, we want to be Agile marketers, know that it's going to be a process. Just like any change management effort, it should start small, it should be incremental, and you should learn a lot from it. There will be a lot of setbacks on not only like training and getting people bought in, but also when you start saying, okay, this is how we're going to do a pilot team, and this is going to be our, core services team, like that is going to change. And it is okay to know that something that you try might not work, but you need to continue to iterate and make sure that things that you're rolling out, from planning meetings to how your teams work together, that will change over time. And it really, really should.
If one organization, they adopted the Agile marketing, can they say that we have agility, we are Agile? Does this equal the two things?
Yeah, I don't think you could ever stick a stake in the ground and say like, we're done. Like we've transformed. I think the interesting thing about when you say something like agile transformation or transformation's ongoing, right? When you think about it should be continuous improvement. Your organization should be continuously improving. So I think it's okay to say that you're an agile organization, but I think that there's a difference between being agile in name only or saying you're agile, more of like the doing agile than actually being agile. So again, if you are a small team where you start doing planning meetings and you start using Jira software and you start using Confluence and everything is visualized and you're tracking your work and you've shortened the amount of time that work comes in versus work gets executed. And it's like, great, you've improved that, but your marketing campaigns aren't getting any better. You're not getting more efficient. Like, I think it's starting to go back and look at like, okay, values and principles, like, are we solving problems for our customers? What are we learning from this? Are we taking an iterative approach? Are we flexible in our approach? Like, how are we able to respond more quickly? Because if you're not doing that and having data to really back up what you're doing, then you're just going through the motions, which isn't bad. I think some teams, when they start going through the motions, isn't bad. You're not going to see the results that a lot of organizations that are agile and are able to continue to very quickly solve problems for their customers. Yeah, so I think that's something to definitely watch out for. I definitely encourage people to look at the organizational structure, figure out how to organize teams around whatever makes sense for your business, around teams, around, the customer, around value streams, around products, that should change over time. But don't just start doing stand-ups and think that, you're going to be agile. It's a lot more than that. And it really is more of that mindset, and that mindset kind of coming to life through a variety of practices like that we have mentioned.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts on agile marketing?
Yeah, I would just say anyone that's listening and you're a marketer, product marketer, I would read Death of a Marketer. I would learn as much as you can about agile, because there's a quote out there. I think it's the Evans theory or Evans principle, something like that. It's just about business agility in general. And it says that an organization is only agile as its least agile division. And as companies across the world are trying to figure out how to be more nimble and what agile means for them, agile is going to come to your marketing department, whether it's from the bottom up, the top down, or somewhere in the middle. So as a marketer out there, I would definitely educate yourself now and start evaluating yourself and your team and seeing what your problems are and how you can improve. Because someday you're gonna hear, we're doing this agile marketing thing, and I would say you want to be part of that. It's really exciting. It's a way to focus on your customers and use data to make really good decisions. So read Andrea's book, read Death of a Marketer. They also have you'd have to Google it. I don't know what the link is, but they actually have a marketing agile assessment. You can go through several questions. That's something that we did. And there's, I think, 20 plus questions, and you kind of rank your organization, your team, from maybe 1 to 4. And that was really eye-opening to us on areas that we needed to focus on and areas that we were pretty okay on. And that helped us figure out some small areas of improvement before we started, or that helped us really get buy-in to larger change. So also, I would say if you want to learn more about just Agile in general, at Atlassian.com/Agile, we have an entire Agile coach website where you can read use cases. You can read articles about Agile, the mindset, the different practices from Scrum to Kanban, how Agile scales. And we're going to be putting some Agile marketing content on there as well soon, which will be really exciting. But there's a ton of information on there, and even some tutorials. So if you're out there and you are using Jira software, or maybe your software teams are, there's some tutorials on there where you can explore how Jira might work for you as well.
Thank you. So again, everyone who are listening, the book is called The Death of a Marketer by Andrea Freire. Thank you for sharing your experiences and insights and knowledge with us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
It was so great to see you. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources, including training, playbooks, templates, and events. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.